This is Fight Fans Radio.
Hello everybody and welcome to BJJ ADDICT Radio. Today is June 4th. It's going to be a good day. We have Mr. Stephan Kesting on. If you don't know who he is, go find out or stay tuned and you'll find out more about him. But definitely one of the most popular promoters of BJJ as far as always setting up YouTube videos and releasing DVDs, and he has his own Grapple Arts website that promotes a lot of interviews himself and whatnot. Excited to talk to him. Also, it is the return of Jeerowel P.
Hey, what's up?
You've been gone 1 month.
I have.
4 episodes.
Been a long time.
And the start of the show, people just had to hear me rant.
Oh, it was a beautiful voice.
Thank you. So, how was the 1 month away from BJJ ADDICT Radio?
It was good.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was good and it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's because, you're at the gym, you're doing a lot of things that you don't want to do sometimes, such as dieting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever been on a diet where you don't eat carbs or things that you would normally eat.
It's hard to diet when you have a love affair with Dr. Pepper.
It's hard to be on a diet when you're Filipino.
That's funny.
Yeah, thank you.
So for the people listening, they're aware that you were training for a fight.
Yeah.
Fill them in quickly.
Well, yeah, I was supposed to have a fight June 1st, I think it was on Saturday. But, things didn't work out the way, I wanted to. I didn't lose. No, just kidding. I was training for the fight, and I felt like I was priming properly. And a couple days before the fight, I found out that the guy pulled out of the fight. And, that screwed me up.
Yeah.
And I was like, I guess the company chose a different fighter. So I was like, man, I need to train a lot more. And, I try to train properly for this guy. And I didn't want to take like 4 days off, 5 days off and I went to wrestling practice and I blew out my knee. Not severely, but I did have problems with it in training camp.
Yeah.
But and so I pulled out of the fight.
Wow. But
it's the smart thing to do sometimes, I think pull out or be injured,
I hear you. So tough choice had to be made. Either way, some things do happen for the best. So either way, it's unfortunate, but I'm glad you're back live on the air, right here with us.
Yeah.
So let's recap a bit, because there's too much going on. Too much craziness happening. Okay, the Mundials, which is, as everyone knows,
Portuguese for
the Worlds. Hanato Laraj did not win a 28th World Championships there. He didn't even compete, so that's unfortunate. But 27 times still, that's amazing. All right, let's just go down. Kauter beats Bruno Maffasini in the roosterweight, which he doesn't beat him too much at the Worlds. It was amazing. Guy Mendes didn't make it to the finals. Nor I don't think he saw the podium.
Wow,
that's a shocker. Augusto
Tanquino.
Yeah, Mendes beat Rafa Mendes in the finals. which was I knew it was going to be a big year for him, so I wasn't too surprised. But like, I think Rafa Mendes was surprised.
I think honestly, maybe it's the fact that they opened up art of jiu-jitsu.
It's funny you say that because I was going to ask you that too and talk like about that and see what our listeners think. Because you know, they were even saying it on the live stream. Budo Jake and Sean Williams were talking about, oh yeah, but Otavio Souza has a gym and he's a killer still, and so it looks like they still train hard, but it's gotta affect it somehow, right?
I mean, why are you losing?
Yeah, there's just one match. Everyone loses a match.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous that people expect them to win every single time they step on the mat.
Yeah.
But that's the pressure they have.
Yeah. No,
were you shocked to hear that? No golds from the Mendes brothers?
I was a little pissed because I'm a big Mendes brothers fan.
How about Andre Galvao not getting the gold either? Shocking?
Yeah, but no. I mean, Braulio Estima's pretty good.
Phenomenal. He
is
looks
he
great.
Bigger?
No, they're in the same weight, apparently, I guess.
Well, Braulio's a lot bigger.
Taller.
Longer.
Yeah, definitely lankier body.
Galvao's good.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'd still give Andre Galvao the edge over Braulio in an MMA fight.
Oh, that'd be cool to see, too.
Yo, Braulio Estima fought in MMA.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm trying to know the guy. He's just phenomenal. Speaking of Braulio, he also got the submission of the tournament in my eyes. He did a amazing knee bar. I was going to say a leg lock, but yeah, knee bar. Some other big things. I mean, of course, Buchecha wins his weight, wins absolute. Keenan Cornelius destroyed everyone up until the absolute finals. He lost to Paulo Miao, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, it meant a lot to Paulo. I didn't whatever. I don't think people are, oh man, da, da, da. People like to complain about their fights, but either way, Keenan had a sick fight. But overall, I watched about 20 hours of the Worlds, and I was impressed. It was amazing.
I kind of wanted my boy Kit Dale to win.
Oh man,
but
yeah, that opening round he gets Keenan Cornelius, so that's not a good look.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had the best match against him. After that, everyone got finished by Keenan.
Yeah.
And he didn't by Kit Dale, so. There's too much.
Yeah.
Too much going on. So we'll touch on one more topic before we reach out and call our guest. Man, right now, Metamoris releases, let's go back. Originally, it was Bill Cooper versus Ryan Hall.
Yeah. Ryan
Hall gets injured, replaces him with Victor Estima.
Yeah.
This morning, the other day, or very close to either today or yesterday, Metamoris released Bill Cooper out of their fight for whatever reasons, unknown. I don't know. People say there's a reason, but
well, I would say that
Bill Cooper said today that it wasn't to do with no racist comments. So I want to put that out there. He says it has nothing to do with Twitter or racist comments, and he doesn't know where that came from. But Keenan Cornelius is now fighting Victor Estima. What do you think? Do you think, because Bill Cooper was on Twitter today talking with BJJ Addict, and shout out to Victor Estima saying, hey, we're all talking, this big discussion's going on it, and he's telling Victor, don't take this fight. It's really disrespectful that they threw you a brown belt. Everyone else is fighting black belts against black belts. Why? He's like, you've done too much in the sport for a brown belt to get the chance to fight you and make a name off of you. What do you think?
Yeah and no. But, I mean, he's a prospect, right? I mean, Keenan Cornelius is a monster. He's fought at the black belt level already.
Of course.
So, I mean...
I'm excited about the match. But do you think, just outside the box, do you think that's an insult? Like, if you had a fight and someone said, fight this white belt, you wouldn't be like, oh, man.
I'm gonna say this. Keenan Cornelius has a lot more accolades, better credentials and accomplishments than most black belts.
Good point.
I mean, everyone's scared of Keenan Cornelius.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a compliment towards Victor Estima. But, I mean, I don't want to say who I think is going to win.
No, we want you to see who's going to win.
Keenan Cornelius.
Do you really?
With a submission, yeah.
Wow. What? I don't know if it's gi or no gi right now, so I don't know. But you know, we saw him in the Kumite. We've seen him all over the tournaments, and
he's like
he finishes everything. He could grapple forever. This 20 minutes is nothing.
And he's bigger than Victor Estima, I'm pretty sure.
Twitter today was blown up, and everyone was laughing and saying that Keenan has no chance, and Estima's gonna destroy him.
No, he's gonna.
I thought it was a good matchup, personally.
I don't. I think it's a mismatch.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Wow.
So.
Wow. A miss.
Which is kind of weird, knowing that we interviewed both of these people. But I mean, you gotta think in a gambler's perspective.
And the money's on Keenan.
Yeah.
Crazy. Metamoris also today released a new video. Shinya Oki and a Kron compound.
Kron's gonna kill him.
Well,
there's a lot of mismatch in this.
In this Metamoris?
Yeah. Also, I think that maybe the Ryan Hall thing.
Yeah.
Since he pulled out and Bill Cooper pulled out, I think it's the fact that he wanted to fight Ryan Hall. So I think maybe that's,
Who knows? Maybe.
Like, why would you fight?
He didn't pull out. The Metamoris released him. They kicked him out.
Why? Oh, it's the racist thing.
He said he didn't do anything.
I don't understand. What happened?
I don't know. So we'll have to reach out to Bill Cooper, get him on this show so he could give us the real scoop. But, he said he didn't say anything racist or tweeted. And, we'll get to the bottom line of this. We'll reach out to him and get him on the show. He could tell us what he thinks, and we'll get him to talk about Victor Estima.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Let's start this show, folks. Let's get into it. We got a good man waiting, so.
Hello, Stephan Kesting here.
Hello, Stephan. You're live on BJJ ADDICT RADIO.
Oh, that's awesome. How are you doing?
I'm great. By the way, I'm David, and also there's a guy here, Jer. We're the hosts, so two different voices, just so you're clear.
Okay, so you're not manifesting multiple personality disorder at this very moment.
Well, we won't go there. So, Stephan, I was just wondering if you had chance, do you watch the Worlds over the weekend?
I didn't get to watch all of them, but I certainly got to watch some of the key matches, and I thought they were very exciting, the stuff that I saw. Yes, there was definitely some of that old 50-50 pulling, get ahead by a point, get ahead by or a couple of points, get ahead by an advantage. But by and large, and I was cherry-picking the matches, of course, because I was watching the ones that people were most excited about, and so, of course, those were the ones that had the most action. But, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Nice. And just since you're touching on that, the 50-50, there was a lot of that coming up and playing quite the strategic game to get the W. What side of the fence are you about that style of jiu-jitsu?
Well, it's funny. I was having this exact. I'm just coming from a training session with my friend and training partner Richie, and we were just having this conversation because what we were working on was some of the fancier new stuff, and one of the guys standing around was like, "I just hate that stuff. It's so not relevant to self-defense." And in general, I can see his point. I mean, ultimately, it's a martial art, and that means you do have to translate it back to reality at some point, because you don't want to end up with something, no offense to Taekwondo practitioners out there, it's an amazing sport, but if you ignore a huge aspect of the reality of a fight, which is getting punched in the face, you end up going down the rabbit hole and developing an entirely amazing and athletic sport, which may not have that much bearing on reality until you put the gloves on and you get punched in the head again. So in the same way, it's a valid question. There's all this berimbolo stuff, this 50-50 stuff. Does it undermine the combative aspects of the martial art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Now, asked the same question of Keenan Cornelius when I interviewed him a month or two ago for my podcast. And he had an excellent point. He said, well, if someone's punching you in the face, I can't think of a better way to stop them from punching you in the face than putting them into 50-50. And really, that's a point well taken. So perhaps in the same way that that Taekwondo would become a lot more combative if they said, okay, you've got your black belt, you know all this kicking, now you're allowed to punch in the head. The same way that a lot of the Taekwondo guys who go over to MMA or Thai boxing have to make that adaptation. Maybe they should allow things like heel hooks in the advanced, in the black belt division with the gi, because that would dramatically cut down on the amount of 50-50 stalling. It would, if you and I end up in the 50-50, and you're trying to heel hook me, all of a sudden there's a lot more urgency to my being able to move, and maybe stalling the last 8 minutes of the match might not be such a good idea if my cruciate ligaments are in continuous danger for the last 8 minutes.
Great point.
Then again, one final thought on one additional thought on this is never going to be the final thought. Is I'm sure that back in the old days, when people used to jump high bar, they used to do that scissor kick thing. Mm-hmm. I know when I went to high school, they didn't want the kids doing the back flop, the Fosbury flop. They wanted us to scissor kick over. And I guess they didn't want little kids landing on their necks and breaking their necks. But I'm sure when Fosbury started coming up, and then it was revolutionized by a guy called, I think, Dick Fosbury, who started jumping over backwards and flopping on his back, the way that you see every single high jumper in the world doing it now. And I'm sure that when he started doing this initially, there were coaches shaking their heads and going, oh, what is this sport coming to? This is a horrendous development. You know, maybe like the same way that the grumpy old judges on the Muppet Show would be looking at, look at this Berimbolo stuff. This is horrendous. But, you know, it becomes part of the sport. Is it the flavor of the day? Who knows? Is it encouraged by the rules? It is, sort of, especially by the ridiculous rules that the IBJJF has around footlocks. You know, the whole reaping the knee thing. And for people who don't know what that is, it's basically the IBJJF banned the single best way to footlock or ankle lock somebody in a way that's essentially, I would argue, very safe. Yes, you could conceivably be hurt by it. You can conceivably be hurt by any submission. So they got rid of that, and now people are evolving, and they got rid of heel hooks. I guess it was never part of the art. And now people have evolved around it and found sort of a loophole and are exploiting that. So I think it's too soon to tell what the long-term effect on the evolution of the sport is going to be.
I just want to know what your thoughts are on, a lot of people say that when someone transitions, especially like a jiu-jitsu practitioner, transitions into MMA, their jiu-jitsu kind of changes. Do you think that it's good, you know, for the jiu-jitsu? Like, is it still effective in terms of competing in jiu-jitsu tournaments?
You mean this new stuff, or is there a specific style of jiu-jitsu that you're talking about? Well,
let's say, like, if somebody transitions into MMA, like, if you're getting punched and you're using your jiu-jitsu, like, does it change your jiu-jitsu in terms of, like, competition jiu-jitsu? You know what I mean?
Of course it changes it. It changes it hugely. There have been no shortage. I mean, how long have you been watching the UFC? Well, do you remember the first UFC event that you watched?
Number 1.
Royce Gracie.
Okay. So, Royce Gracie did great. For his physique and his level of athleticism, he did great, and it was just such a neutron bomb of a concept. Take guys to the ground, get them out, get their back, choke them out. But then, do you remember the next wave of, you know, world jiu-jitsu champions coming? And you had guys who'd, you know, medaled in, I don't know which events were around, but, you know, the Brazilian national champion shows up. And you're like, oh, God, this guy is going to kill this fighter. And you realize that he's not. I remember one fight where the jiu-jitsu guy was lying on his back, sort of with a loose De La Riva, getting punched in the face. The other guy was John Lewis, hanging onto the fence, repeatedly punching the other guy in the face. And the whole time the announcers were going, "Oh, the jiu-jitsu guy is exactly who he wants to be." I'm like, he's getting punched in the face a lot. He may not, it may be a heretical thought, but I don't think he's winning this fight. So yeah, there was the next generation of guys who came over who had sort of focused on the sport and hadn't really focused on the combative aspect of it. And I think a lot of them paid the price. Some of them made the transition, of course. And now, I'm a little bit biased. In the interest of full disclosure, I should say that my main jiu-jitsu influence is from the Carlson Gracie lineage. So Carlson Gracie to Marcus Suarez to me. And the stereotypical Carlson Gracie style is very top-oriented, right? Get on top, don't pull guard, put pressure on the guy, be mean, push, 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 push. And certainly that does all right in tournaments. In jiu-jitsu tournaments, the Carlson Gracie guys did very well. They were a top team for quite a while. But I think even more importantly, that style of getting to the top translated very well to MMA. And so a lot of the top jiu-jitsu guys fighting in MMA, especially back in the Pride era, were from more so the Carlson Gracie lineage than some other beautiful schools of jiu-jitsu that concentrate more on the bottom game and the spider guard, or even a loose butterfly guard game. I think there's certain styles that are a lot harder to translate to MMA than others. Certainly being on the top is generally better than being on the bottom in MMA, or in self-defense for that matter. Having a style that's dependent on either the double sleeve grip, like a spider guard, yeah, there's some carryover there to self-defense, but I wouldn't make that your primary style, especially in MMA when you get so slippery. Or the classic sleeve and collar grip, the same side sleeve, cross side collar grip, that's the basis for a lot of closed guard work. And you don't have those when the gi comes off and you're doing submission grappling or you're doing MMA, you don't have that anymore. You can even make an argument that stuff's more relevant to self-defense because usually somebody's going to be wearing clothing and you can bunch up their t-shirt or you can, they're wearing a jacket. I'm here in the Pacific Northwest. We wear raincoats for about 10 months of the year. So people are running around wearing gis. If you're wrestling somebody who's only wearing a Speedo and is all oiled up, then you probably made a mistake a few steps back to get in a self-defense situation with somebody just wearing a Speedo and all goofed up. So, yeah, I think there's certainly some kinds of jiu-jitsu that translate much better to MMA and self-defense than others.
Yeah, nice. Well, you touched on some things I want to talk about. So let's talk about, first of all, you said Marcus Suarez and the Carlson Gracie lineage. For the people that don't know, I believe Marcus Suarez is the most decorated, highest-ranked jiu-jitsu practitioner for BJJ, especially, obviously, in Canada. Can you touch on how you started with that? And also, I know you've done martial arts for a long time, and what makes you lean towards grappling-oriented more so in promoting that side of the martial arts?
Okay. Marcus is very much the prototypical Carlson Gracie style, has a very Carlson Gracie style jiu-jitsu. And I believe he's the most highly ranked jiu-jitsu practitioner in Canada. And I think he's one of Carlson's highest ranked guys. I don't know who else is that high, but there aren't many in any case. So a very physical style, places a lot of emphasis on conditioning. For a while, there was this belief that jiu-jitsu is all about the flow, my friend. You don't need to have any strength. Well, that's not really true. If two people of equal technique are competing, regardless of what venue it is, the better conditioned athlete's going to win, in general. So yeah, I met Marcus years and years ago. My first exposure to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I guess would be through Eric Paulson.
What year are we talking?
Whoa. Well, let's go all the way back to my very first exposure to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was when the Gracie in Action tapes came out before the first UFC. So those were terribly exciting, and I was training with Philip Jelena. This was in the late 80s, back in Montreal, and we were doing Kajikembo karate, not really a strong ground component, but we saw these tapes, and we really didn't know what we were doing. You know, we saw that it was better to be on top than on bottom. I think that was the lesson from the first Gracie in Action tape. And we would just wrestle. I had a little bit of judo background. We had been introduced a little bit to shoot wrestling by Danny Nosanto. Philip had wrestled a little bit in high school. We had some classical jiu-jitsu tricks, so we knew if you bend the person's wrist this way, they'll tap. I had long hair at the time, so we would wrestle after class, myself and my training partners, and we didn't know much about the sport, so we were pulling hair. I remember coming home and washing, maybe that's why I'm shaving my head now. I'd wash my hair and these big clumps of hair would fall out like I had leukemia or scurvy. And we'd be bending fingers to get submissions. And you know what? It was still laid down basic body mechanics and basic, it was learning by doing. And when you look at all the people who are training in garages now, it proves that learning by doing is a real possibility. And now when you combine the fact that you've got DVDs, YouTube, apps, emails, websites, learning on your own is way more feasible than it has ever been in the history of, I'll go in the history of humanity. If you and I were samurai warriors in 15th century Japan, and you cut my head off using some, spinning, jumping, slashing cut, well, that was the end of it. It wasn't on YouTube the next week for everybody to be analyzing. My friend and I were just working the Braulio Stima spider guard to sweep to spinning under to the leg in the armpit knee bar move. And I'm sure that there are thousands of people who are practicing that same move today.
The one he just nailed at the World?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that was amazing.
Beautiful. Isn't that great?
I called that the stub of the weekend.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But unlike, you chopping my head off with the jumping, spinning, inside out, diving swallow cut or whatever we would have called it in 15th century Japan, it's on YouTube now. The secret's out. Sorry. Everyone's going to be practicing it. So where was I going in this rant? Yeah, so we did a lot of training by doing, and that was in the late 80s, or the mid-80s, late 80s. I don't know the exact dates. And then when the UFC started, I wonder if it was before the UFC. Anyhow, I hooked up with Eric Paulson and started, I think it was after the UFC had started. He'd already been training with Hicks, the Gracies in the garage and Hickson, and then maybe even the Machados. So his combat submission wrestling, which is heavily catch wrestling based and Japanese Shudo based, had already started to be influenced by the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Then it's hard for people who are training today to remember, but in the early 90s, when it was a big deal when there was a blue belt in your town. Oh my God, did you hear there's a blue belt? He's renting space. He's teaching twice a week. And that blue belt was a Carlson Gracie blue belt. His name was Przemek Grobczynski, or Przemek Wallach, which was his name then. He's now in the LA area as a personal trainer. He's a fantastic guy. And, he took a whole bunch of us and brought us up to a fairly good level, just as a blue belt. And it goes to show that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and he was more than a one-eyed man, one and a half-eyed man, I'll say. And he again, through experimentation, you threw a couple of the basic techniques out, you threw a couple of the concepts out, threw some VHS tapes in there, and we started improving in our level. And then when Marcus came to town, it took me a while because it was so expensive, and I was a student at the time. But then I started training with him, and yeah, so I've had, it's not to say I haven't learned stuff from other lineages. I've really enjoyed the times I've trained with the Machados or with Marcelo Garcia. Or now, of course, I'm going to start forgetting people that I've trained with, and I apologize to everybody. But yeah, you can learn from anybody. So that's sort of the answer to the lineage question. What was your other question?
Oh, just what kind of made you gravitate towards promoting BJJ, right, with grapple arts and all your instructionals on YouTube? Just what made you kind of lean that way opposed to other martial arts, since you have done a bunch of different ones?
Okay. Well, I think initially it was the sheer effectiveness of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the whole concept of grappling, and it really was a way that a smaller, weaker person could compensate for athleticism using knowledge of technique and positional awareness to nullify many of the natural advantages that somebody who's much bigger than you or much stronger than you or much more explosive than you would have. And I've gotten into trouble about this before, but if you and I are boxing, you've got 5 or 6 main punches to throw at me. You've got the jab, the cross, the hook, the uppercut, the overhand, the body hook. Now we're beginning to run out of punches. And, maybe there's 2 stances. Maybe you can be orthodox or southpaw. So at most I'm going to be 99% of the time when I'm in the ring with you, I'm going to be facing one of 6 punches from grand total of 2 positions. Now, I'm not saying there isn't subtlety to boxing. I'm not saying there isn't technique. Of course there is. But because the options are fairly limited, athleticism is going to make a bigger difference in the game. If you're much faster than I am or got much better reaction time, it's just going to show. I could know all that I want to know about boxing, and you're still going to punch my face in. If we go to the ground, though, we've got a lot more than 6 basic moves, right? We've got sweeps, we've got other positional improvements, we've got arm locks, we've got chokes, we've got leg locks. You can attack the neck, the back, the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder, the hip, the knee, the foot, the diaphragm even. You can choke people in the diaphragm. You can do each of these 10, 20, 30 different ways. And so if you know just a little bit more technique than somebody else, that technical difference can compensate for a whole lot of other things. And the most important thing I found was that you could go and test it. If you and I were practicing flying tiger kung fu, and I say this as I did many years of kung fu training, and let's say one of our techniques is monkey plucks the eyeballs, and it's where you reach into the guy's face and you gouge his eye sockets out, and you practice this in your kata or your form thousands of times, right? How do you actually test it? You and I could spar it once, and if you pull it off on me or if I pull it off on you, well, that's kind of the last time we're going to spar together. And so you're not going to get the chance to defend against somebody who's really trying to do it to you over and over and over, and you're not going to be able to do it against somebody who's fully resisting you over and over and over. Whereas that was the beauty of Jiu-Jitsu. You could actually try to do your stuff for real, as hard as you want, pretty much, or we'll say 90% effort. And if I'm really, really trying to knee bar you, you're really, really trying to stop me from knee barring you. And we can find out. And if I think I've got, we started by talking about the berimbolo. Let's say I think that I can use the berimbolo to pass your guard, take your back and choke you out. And I've got a new way. Instead of gripping your belt or your lapel, I'm going to try gripping, your sleeve. And I think this is the bomb. I can actually go and test it out. And it's either going to work great or it's going to fall on its face. And that real-time feedback is so valuable. So that's really why I gravitated towards the grappling. I'm not the world's most fast-twitch person. I enjoyed the other martial arts that I do, and if I had more time, quite honestly, I would do them. I especially enjoy the Filipino martial arts, the stick and knife stuff.
Yeah.
You can sort of test that. I've done a whole bunch of Dog Brothers style sparring where you're wearing the fencing helmet and hockey gloves and not much else.
Those guys are crazy.
They are, and it's, yes, you can test your technique, but what you can also test, in the same way that, and this is the same thing that Jiu-Jitsu tests, is you can test that massive adrenaline dump, right? Like it makes your hands go, all fine motor control gone. Because when somebody's really whacking on you with a stick, man, you get a good adrenaline dump. And you quickly learn that, fine motor control tends to go out the window, and you really have to work on your emotional self-control. Now, are you ever going to end up in a one-on-one stick fight with some attacker in the street? Probably not. But by having dealt with that gigantic surge of adrenaline that makes you clumsy and stupid, having dealt with that before, time and again, it's more familiar. You're not freaked out by it as much, and hopefully you've got more control over it. That's why I think going to a jiu-jitsu tournament and competing in a jiu-jitsu tournament, even if your only emphasis is self-defense, I only want to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu for the combative self-defense aspects of it. That's great. Go compete. Win or lose, I guarantee that you'll be pretty hyped up. I guarantee, probably you're going to do rookie mistakes like holding your breath. I'd say like 50% of people who go and compete for the first time go through their entire 5-minute match holding their breath almost the whole time, or taking little shallow breaths. And then at the end of it, they're so tired they can barely think. So if your emphasis is self-defense, what makes you think that, somebody tried to mug you and your girl and you had to fight for your life? What makes you think that you're not going to be holding your breath in that situation? So, that your training is going to magically kick in. I think going and placing yourself in stressful situations has a ton of carryover to self-defense, even above and beyond the technical aspect of it. And I think that's a big problem of a lot of the super deadly urban combatives approach, where they learn, deadly killing technique number 1, deadly killing technique number 2. Once again, we get back to the kung fu monkey eye gouging. How are you ever going to test it? How are you ever going to deal with the adrenal stress of that and try it out in real life? So yeah, I really enjoyed the grappling. If I had more time, which I don't, I would do more of the other martial arts stuff. I will probably get back to it at some point in the day because I really enjoyed it. But in the meantime, I don't talk about it much, but I've got young kids. You have to focus on what's most important, and so obviously that's my kids. And then I can't do a little bit of everything. I just want to do more grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, submission grappling, because trying to do a little tiny bit of trying to touch on, do a day a week, a day a month of stick fighting, and a day a month of kickboxing, and a day a month of Jiu-Jitsu. You're going to suck a lot worse than if you do just one of those things every couple times a week.
True.
You have such a unique style of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Who are some people that have affected the way you do your Jiu-Jitsu?
I'd say everybody I've ever trained with, for sure, and that includes teachers and training partners. So the main teachers would be, and I'll credit Daniel Santo, because he was the first person to introduce myself and some of my early training partners to shoot wrestling. Right, so I turned into Shuto in Japan. Do you remember those competitions?
Yeah. With
Rumina Sato going crazy with flying heel hooks, and a lot of good fighters. And so I think he had a huge influence. Eric Paulson had a huge influence. Marcus Suarez, obviously. Watching guys like Marcelo Garcia, I've only trained with him a couple of times, but just watching him move has been a huge influence. So I can't discount that. I've only trained with Mark Lehman a couple of times, but the times that I did, it's funny. It's like that old saying: when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, I'd been working on certain aspects of my game, and then just going to that one seminar, I got a lot out of it. But most importantly, I got the key to the thing that had been holding me back with regards to, well, in that case, it was my butterfly guard, and another time it was what was holding me back with my rear mount. So that was super influential, even though I've trained a grand total of 2 seminars. Oleg Taktarov, I did a bunch of seminars with back in the day, and every time I went, I would get another couple pieces of the leg locking puzzle, plus other stuff. And then it's up to you really to train it and develop it. There's some people you can show the same technique to every day for an entire year and they still won't get it. Some people you show a technique to once and they take it away, they think about it, they drill it, they practice it, they try to do it in sparring, they find out what the problems are, they go back, they think about it some more, and the next time you see them, they're like, hey, yeah, I took that one technique that you showed me and I blew it up into a whole system. I remember showing a guy that I trained with, I think he was a purple belt at the time, the whole sort of head and arm choke series, more like the Darce or the Anaconda series. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't spar with him for a year or so. I went back and, oh my God, he was murdering people and it was all I could. Anytime I went to Turtle, boom, it's on there. Now I'm fighting for my life. He took that one little thing, it fit his body, it fit his mentality, and we didn't need to work together every single day. He just needed that next piece of the puzzle to take it and make it a major part of his game.
Yeah, who were some of your, one, this is how I think about seminar. Who was the most fun that you did? And then on another side, who did you see and it was like, wow, that is probably the best instruction I've ever heard for that move? Who taught the best as far as attending a seminar, and who just straight up you had the most fun at a seminar?
I hope that sometimes when I've been in a seminar, the instructor has showed something and I've started giggling, and I got a bit of a weird look, but it wasn't because I thought it was funny or because I thought it was stupid. It was like, oh, good Lord, that's what you do, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, finally everything fell into place. So I've had pretty much everyone I've mentioned, I've had one or more of those experiences with. The person I've trained with most in seminar, it'd be a toss-up between Daniel Nasanto and Eric Paulson. Now, Daniel Nasanto also teaches a lot of Filipino martial arts, Indonesian martial arts. So Eric is much more MMA-focused and submission grappling focused. So in terms of who I've learned the most from in seminars, it would have to be Eric. But, who have I had the best time with? Well, I've been to other seminars. I'm not going to mention names that I didn't have a good time at. The instructor thought it was, you give them $100 and for a 2-hour seminar, and the first hour is jumping jacks and shuttle drills and leapfrogs and a conditioning session while the instructor is busy off texting. And so I can tell you those were times that I didn't have a good time. But everybody that I've mentioned so far, I've had fantastic times at, or I wouldn't go back. I mean, ultimately, yeah, it's about getting better. But at a certain point, I don't compete anymore. Whether I ever do, and whether I ever will again in the future is an open question. But my life, I'm just not at that stage in my life where I've got the time to dedicate to being at a level that I would want to be at for competing. Therefore, I train for a couple of reasons, but a big reason that I train is it's fun. I like hanging out with my friends. I like rolling around. Sorry?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, look at what do little kids do when they're playing, right? Half the time they're rolling around on the ground together. And a friend of mine pointed out, well, that's the same thing that adults do when they get drunk. Yeah, it's true, I guess. now Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just that same thing, just we're not drunk, hopefully, and it's fun. And if it's not fun, ultimately, you're not going to keep on doing it. Like maybe if you're just driven by competition and you really, that's your monomaniacal focus, all right, you'll do it. But if that's not your focus, then it's either fun or fitness. And you know what? If it was just fitness, there are probably easier and cheaper ways to get in shape than spending years of your life working towards a black belt. Let's say 10 years on average. You'd probably be a more efficient use of your time to go and do some sprints and go and do some squats, bench press, deadlift and pull-ups. And, in terms of, looking good at the beach, if that's your focus, that would be more efficient than jiu-jitsu. I think jiu-jitsu is a lot more fun. Although I do enjoy the weightlifting as well.
I was just wondering, you did your How to Defeat a Bigger Opponent series with Emily Kwok. You've also done it with Brendan Mullins. My good friend at Jiu-Jitsu on Twitter, my man Doug, he bought your DVDs. He's a bigger man, 200 pounds, and he enjoyed it so much because it actually helped him defend against a smaller person, the way they move.
Well, knowledge is power, right? And the dirty little secret. I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'2", let's say 215 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm not the world's strongest 215 pounder. My legs are pretty strong. My arms and chest, not so much. But I'll say I'm bigger than a lot of the people that I roll with. But the dirty little secret of working with both Emily and Brendan Mullins is that I've ended up using a lot of the techniques and concepts that they've showed me, which they were teaching it from a perspective of defeating a bigger, stronger opponent. And I found, well, first of all, two things. First of all, even big guys, and I'll say that I'm a big guy, are worried about running into bigger guys, right? It's kind of I've been training for years and years and years, and when I'm going up against a 250 or a 300 pounder, yeah, I know this is what Brandon Mullins and Emily Kwok deal with every day, but it's a little bit worrying, right? You got some big guy who's either spent a ton of time under iron or is cranking the growth hormone or whatever, and it's a little bit worrying. Like, oh my God, are my techniques going to work? And if I'm feeling that way as a black belt with years and years of instruction or training, then I can only imagine this is pretty much a universal issue, right? I mean, this is something that we've been dealing with since prehistoric times. Oh, the Mongol army is attacking. They've got 100,000 riders, and we have 50,000 soldiers. We're in deep caca. Again, the bigger, stronger army is an issue. So, first of all, I used a lot of the stuff that I learned from Emily and Brandon in the first two How to Defeat the Bigger, Stronger Opponent series, which are out as a DVD, and soon, actually, I'm just working on the final stages of releasing them as apps. Yeah, there's my promotional plug.
No, this is what I want you to do. You can plug everything. Shameless. You got to be shameless.
First of all, I've used that stuff when I've run into bigger people, but I've also used a lot of that stuff when I'm sparring smaller people. And that's sort of the dirty little secret. I guess bigger people can do stuff that little people can't do. But a lot of what little people do, if bigger people use it, you'd go, oh, that guy's, not only is he big, but he's really technical. Or sometimes you hear big guys getting the compliment of, he moves like a little guy. I think people used to describe Higan Machado's game like that. I've never rolled with Higan. I've never actually seen him roll, but people that I knew described his game like that. He's a big man doing a small man jiu-jitsu. And they meant it as a compliment, meaning he's not just using brute force. He's using technique. He's using timing. He's using tricks. And so I think in some ways a small person game translates better to big people than the other way around.
Yeah, because of that DVD, I've now been idiot swept a bunch of times, and I literally feel like an idiot.
Oh, like the sweep Emily teaches and that. Yeah, I think if people don't want to fork out the money for that right away, I think it's if you go to my YouTube channel, you can get that one particular technique for free, or it's also on my Guard Sweeps app DVD. My Guard Sweeps app for iPhone and for Android. It's the Idiot Sweep. And you know what? When you see Marcelo Garcia spar, and this was one of the connections that I finally made, like, when I was working with Emily, because I finally understood what it was Marcelo was doing. Basically, I'm going to try and describe it. If you're standing in front of me, and I'm sort of sitting in a butterfly guard, if I scoot forward and put my insteps behind your ankles from the inside, I go through your legs and my toes hook out, and I push your knees, I block both your feet, and you have to fall backward. It's like that old stupid high school trick where somebody would kneel down behind you, and then somebody would push you in the chest and you'd fall back. It's the exact same thing. So Marcelo, when he's rolling against high-level guys, I don't think he's ever, that I've seen, caught a high-level guy in that original technique. But he uses it all the time on one leg. On the other leg, they step out, but then that just sets up the next thing, whether that's, transitioning to a single leg, transitioning to a single leg X guard, transitioning to a sickle sweep, using that almost like a jab to off-balance the guy and get a reaction and then take advantage of that reaction. So working with Emily there, all of a sudden, I'd seen that technique before. I'd seen that technique ages ago in a book. I'm trying to remember who showed it. Possibly Hoyler Gracie or possibly Jean-Jacques Machado. I've got hundreds of jiu-jitsu books. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. That's goofy. But to then have Emily teach it to me, and then finally I made the jump like, oh, I get it now. This is what Marcelo does all the time. And that's one thing Emily's really good at, is essentially reverse engineering Marcelo Garcia's game, because he's been such a major influence on her, and she's such a good teacher, that it's kind of, it's no discredit to Emily to call it Marcelo Garcia for idiots. Marcelo Garcia is a really good teacher. I don't mean to dismiss that. But sometimes you have to hear the same thing from more than one person. Like, keep your hands up when you're throwing, don't drop your rear hand when you're jabbing. And then somebody else tells you, don't drop your rear hand when you're jabbing. And somebody else tells you, every time you jab, you're dropping your rear hand. Finally, it's not because that person was a better teacher. It's just you finally heard it enough times to make it through your thick skull. And then you're like, oh, I get it. I should keep this hand up when I'm jabbing. It's not new information, but it's newly settled into your brain.
For the people that want to progress and make a lifestyle out of jiu-jitsu, is it important, like, if you're a world champion to, does being a world champion pretty much determine if you're going to be successful in progressing in the sport?
I don't think so. I think it's possible to progress and get your black belt if that's let's just say that's the end goal. I don't actually think it's the end goal at all. I think way too many people get fixated on belts. But let's just, for the sake of argument, because I'm tired of arguing about it, say your goal is to get your black belt. I don't think you have to compete to get your black belt. I think if you compete, and I'm quoting Eric Paulson here, you can learn more in one competition than you can in 6 months of training sometimes, because the flaws of your game get exposed brutally, and you're like, okay, I've got maybe what you had only worked against your training partners, because everybody passes the guard the same way. Everybody passes the guard on their knees, and you've got a killer game against people who are passing the guard on their knees. But now in tournament, you run into a guy whose whole game is based on standing up, and you had no clue of what to do. So you were a purple belt in defending the kneeling guard pass, and you were a white belt or a low-level blue belt with defending standing guard passes. That's something you find out in tournaments sometimes. So I think you will make faster progress if you compete. I think you'll as I was talking about earlier, you'll street-proof your art if you compete. You don't have to. I think it's perfectly feasible to test yourself in other ways. And so then if you don't have to compete, then you don't have to be a world champion to get your black belt. You don't have to be a world champion to make a lifestyle out of it. It might take a little bit longer. You might have to work on becoming a better teacher. The analogy, and I think it's a Danny Nosanto analogy, is who would you rather train with, Mike Tyson or his boxing coach? Right? There are some competitors out there who are fantastic at doing and terrible at teaching. So if you had the choice, I'd go with a better teacher rather than a better competitor. Now, obviously, sometimes you get great competitors who are also good teachers. That's fantastic. But there's been a lot of people who've had, successful tournament careers. They've competed locally, maybe a couple of bigger tournaments, and then for whatever reason they left that behind and just concentrated on the art. And that's fine too.
I was just wondering how you got into all of this, like getting DVDs out. I can't remember. I'm sure it's not the first ever, but you were doing this a long time ago, and you actually made a DVD with not that well known in Canada or the world, GSP. You also did one with Dennis Kang. How did you link up, and what made you think about doing these things with them back then? And what was your mindset? Did you know that one day you'd be doing this with Emily Kwok? Obviously not her, but the fact that you would continue doing this type of video series.
Well, I've got to correct you a little bit. I didn't do a DVD or a video with George St. Pierre. I did interview him, and I did put his interview in together as a bonus for my Dennis Kang
I apologize.
DVD. So that's whatever. I produce so much stuff that it's hard to keep track of it even for myself. I can't expect other people to keep track of it perfectly. The way I got started was actually completely by accident. I had been playing with some omoplata entries, and I was coming up with my grand unified theory of omoplata. Initially, when I learned the omoplata, I learned it from Indonesian silat, which by Daniel Nosanto, it's sort of a finishing move. You hit the guy, you take him down, and then you put him into an omoplata, essentially, to break the shoulder or to restrain him. And I was like, man, you could do this in Jiu-Jitsu. And I was working on it. I was like, man, I have invented a new move. This is going to revolutionize the game. And then I saw some event from Brazil where, Fabio Jeerowel was busy using it, and it was the move du jour of that tournament. It's like, oh, okay, somebody else thought of this first. But, that happens a fair bit where you think you've invented something. I think we've all invented something only to find out that other people have invented it before us. And that's okay. I mean, there's only so many ways to move. However, I kept on sort of researching the position and watching competition and experimenting. And a friend of mine had a VHS camera to record direct to VHS. So we filmed something. It was just for fun, and I wanted to send it to some friends of mine who were spread out across the country. Like, hey, here's like this cool new move. It's got a name. It's called the omoplata, and there's 5 ways to get into it or whatever. And I sent a copy to Eric Paulson. And the next time I saw him, he was like, oh, thanks a lot for that. You should make a DVD. And I was like, man, who'd want to learn from me? I haven't won the world championships. I'm not a UFC champion. I'm just a purple belt. I was just a purple belt at the time. And he's like, it doesn't matter. And he named some other well-known people who were teaching, who weren't world champions, who were making videos. And it's like, it just put it out there. And I thought, you know what? You're right. I think I'm a fairly good teacher. I think I can break this down, at least for a certain personality type. They'll respond to this. And so that was the genesis of it, was producing omoplata and the dynamic guard, a 2 VHS set initially. And I created grapplearts.com, which has been through some pretty major revisions in the last couple of years, as the amount of content on there has just exploded. I think I'm getting close to 1,000 articles, videos, and and tips and techniques on
it's a great website.
Oh, thank you. It's really just the power of persistence. And as I went along, no, I didn't really have a grand unified vision. I think it's really hard to know where the market is going, to know where your life is going, to know what the next technology is going to be. So if you enjoy doing something, keep on doing it, and you'll find a way. And rather than endless, what's the quote? Movement beats meditation. So if you can go ahead and implement something, if you think you have something, and it applies to anything, not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, put it out there, take a risk. And it appeals to a certain personality type. And the longer I go on, the less of a delay cycle I try to have. Try and get it out there. Try and get stuff out there fast. Keep the quality high. And only when I started, I kind of made a promise to myself that I wouldn't teach stuff that I didn't know, because I didn't want to be teaching judo throws that I wasn't comfortable with. I didn't want to be teaching guard passes that I didn't personally use, because you can see when somebody's teaching something just in order to have something to teach, as opposed to teaching something that they understand inside out. So I think that worked really well, working with Brandon and Emily, and hopefully and a few other people along the way, and really taking things that they're good at and getting them to display their very best techniques or concepts or principles or training methods for ultimately my audience. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
I got a question. What is the hardest part about maintaining grapple arts?
Well, the content creation is quite a bit of work, but I really enjoy that. I think there's a lot of sort of day-to-day, behind-the-scenes maintenance stuff that I should be doing that I'm not so good at doing. I think, I really enjoy talking to people via email, but, some days I'm getting 100 emails a day. And again, when you bring that on an already time-limited budget, or a limited time budget, to then respond individually to hundreds of emails and Facebook posts and Twitter tweets, that's hard. It's not unenjoyable, but if I spent all day doing that, then I would never. I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't sleep, I wouldn't train, I wouldn't spend time with my kids, and I sure as hell wouldn't be producing new videos or apps or DVDs or anything like that. So, but typically entrepreneurs, which I would be, go ahead regardless of the actualities of their limitations, right? We'll figure that out later. We'll invade Russia, and somehow we'll try and figure out how to survive the Russian winter once we're there. It didn't work so good for a couple of invading armies, but hopefully it'll work out better for my quest to take over the internet.
Yes. I'll give you this time to plug everything: websites, your apps, like your YouTube channel, your Twitter name, websites, everything you want to do that. Let's do that now, and then I will ask you a final question.
Okay. Well, I have quite a bit of presence on the web. For example, the YouTube channel is youtube.com/Stephan Kesting, StephanKesting. There's grapplearts.com. There's Facebook, which is facebook.com/grapplearts. But really, that's a whole lot of things for people to remember. What I would really suggest is go to grapplearts.com. There's basically, you can sign up for my email newsletter on every single page, just about. And yes, I do let people know when I've got a new product out. However, I also put out tons of non-commercial information. If you sign up on grapplearts.com/newsletter, you get an email newsletter, which every couple of days takes you through a new technique, a new tip. It gives you books that you can download. For example, you get my entire roadmap for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 100% for free. And then that'll kind of be a hub for anything else that you may or may not be interested in. If you don't like what I'm emailing you, there's an unsubscribe link at the bottom of every single email. Click that and you'll never hear from me again. So that's what I would suggest to people. It's a free and risk-free way to find out more about the other products that I have, the free videos I have, the free books I have. When I'm launching a new product and I've got it on sale, you'll find out about that. So that's something best by uploads.com/newsletter.
Nice. Would you email them this radio interview?
Oh, absolutely.
Perfect. That's all that matters.
Yeah. That was your final question?
No, but that was my shot to get this radio show to the masses. No, my last question was, I like to end we have about maybe just about 5 minutes, but I was just wondering, maybe a nice story, through your journey of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, something that you'd like to share with us that maybe you haven't shared with anyone, maybe a time you felt like quitting and you got great advice, or, something to do with you helping, whatever you could think of, but basically, just a fond memory that you have over your journey.
Well, something that I really enjoyed that I was thinking about recently, I got I think it was a Facebook post, it might have been an email, and it was from somebody going, last December, I took my kids to Thailand, and people were like, dude, you're taking your kids to Thailand? It's like, yeah, I think I might be taking them to a slightly different place than where you're going when you're going to Thailand. We're going to the beaches, you enjoy the ladyboy bars, or whatever.
Ladyboy bars.
Anyhow, so there, after I got back, I got an email, Facebook message from somebody, hey, were you on such and such flight from such and such city to such and such city in Thailand? I thought it was you. And people come up fairly often and introduce themselves and say, hey, I really enjoy the email or the apps or the whatever. And it's something I really enjoy, is meeting people. It is this weird moving from the digital world to the real world, moving from a name and an email address to, a face and a person who actually trains. And so if you ever think that you see me on the street or on an airplane in Thailand, come up, say hello. I don't bite, and it's really fun to meet people in real life, or IRL, as we would say in text talk. So come up, don't be shy, introduce yourself. It's a very accessible sport. When you compare it to, NBA basketball or NHL hockey, you're not ever going to be able to, I'm going to totally show my limitations here. You're never going to be at a pickup basketball game with Michael Jordan. You're never going to be out on the rink, on the pond, shooting pucks with Wayne Gretzky. And there should be more recent examples of that, but I don't really follow either sport. So I know those two names. But you know what? It's perfectly feasible to go, when you're on a business trip in New York, to go visit Marcelo Garcia. It's perfectly possible if you're in California to go roll around with Keenan Cornelius and Andre Galvao. It's an amazing sport, and it's still super accessible. Maybe 10 years from now that won't be possible anymore, but for now it is. So, get out, meet people. There are assholes around. Sorry, you might have to bleep that. But
No, you're allowed to say assholes. In fact, you could repeat that sentence if you want.
Okay. There are definitely assholes around. If your asshole alert is going off, then you're probably right. Leave the club. Don't stay. Don't get hurt. But most of the time, most of the people in this sport are pretty friendly, especially if you're not gripping attitude. So that's kind of cool. So long and short, if you see me on the plane in I don't know where I'm going to be traveling to next, Mexico, or in Bora Bora, on the little puddle hopper between islands. If these next apps do really well, then then say hello.
Nice. Well, I just want to thank you for taking time out and speaking with us here on BJJ ADDICT RADIO. And I just like to say I personally really enjoy all the free content you put out, as well as the ones that we pay for, of course. But really enjoy the way you're clear and concise with your instructions. Very easy to grasp, and that's sometimes the hardest thing with describing moves that are complex. So really appreciate it as a fan, and keep doing what you've been doing, and I hope to see more from you. I just want to thank you for talking.
Well, thank you so much. I had a great time today.
Perfect. We'll keep in touch, and hopefully you could be one of the few returning guests on our show.
I would really like that.
All right. Thank you very much. Enjoy your night, sir.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. I got to make some quick announcements before we get kicked off. Jerry, you've been missing the last month, my friend. There's this robotic voice that comes on and it's like, the show will end in 1 minute, and then you start panicking. So, all right. So today was June 4th. We just had an amazing interview with Stephan Kesting. June 11th, we got, man, I can't even pronounce his last name. I feel bad because I don't even want to say his name if I'm gonna mess it up, you know. I'll tell you guys in a second. I'll skip that week. It's man, I'll skip that week. Okay, so in June 18th, we have on AJ Zouza.
Oh yeah.
So he was on the Kumite. He just competed at the World. He's pretty damn awesome. I would like you to say the last name. It starts at the end. So Rodrigo
Remandaruka.
Mandaruka. But
Remandaruka.
yeah, he's very well known in the Brazilian Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu scene. He's out in remote part of Canada. I believe it's Winnipeg. So the BJJ scene's not there that much. So we'll get to talk to him. He's I believe he's a world champion at the Masters and Seniors from 2010. So we'll get to know more about him. I've read about him before. I've seen him instruct. It'll be nice to talk to someone just like we did with AJ Scales last week, who was in Regina, Saskatchewan. So it just so happens that our last three will be 3 weeks in a row, full blast Canada here, and then we'll get back to an American, AJ Zouza, out of I believe Pembroke Pines, the Florida area. So he's a student of Pablo Popovich, and you all seen him probably on the Kumite. So we're stacked coming up, guys, and some more big things coming up. That's it, man. Just hit us up on Twitter, YouTube, everyone. Fight Fans Radio, BJJ ADDICT Radio. You'll see if you tune in. You'll find all our other stuff. We're on Vine now, guys, making funny videos. realDWC and
Life of Jer.
Yeah, is that what you're? No, pause for a second. Vine video.
Vine?
Yeah, you're Jeerowel Padro, your full name. So
Really?
That's how you're gonna find them. Yes.
Oh, cool.
All right, guys, that's it for this week. I'll give the honor to Jared to close this out with the.
All right, guys.
I haven't heard this for a month, so.
Farewell.
You're an asshole.
Hey, dudes!
See ya.
That was so fun.
I'm gonna read.
Hi, dude.